the Public Safety and Quality of Life Committee. It's Wednesday, November 13th, again, 5:30. Lisa Dorsey, our chair, is out tonight, so I'll be helping chair for her. I'm Nicole Shimoni, and I'm here with Brian McGinnis. So this meeting's called to order, and first point on the agenda, any announcements? All right, seeing none. Any comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda? And please be advised you have 3 minutes. Okay, we'll keep moving on. We'll move on to our reports and the fire department report. Come on up.
Good evening, Justin McClure, Assistant Fire Chief. Council has the department's report for October. Call volume remains steady and above average. October was Fire Prevention Month. The department members volunteered 117 hours to spread fire prevention to various schools throughout the 6 municipalities. All of our new command vehicles are in service. Thanks to Council's approval last month, we signed for our new engine, and the order has been placed. We'll see you in 4 years. In terms of the ladder truck has finally been towed to the frame shop. The appraiser has to go back out because the current cost of repairs exceeds the dollar value that the insurance company has authorized. It was their goal to be out there no later than Friday of this week. But there is currently an $87,000 difference between what the insurance company has approved and what Fireline has currently estimated for repairs. And we anticipate that there will be at least one more estimate for motor and transmission repairs and putting the apparatus back together. The lease costs certainly are having an impact on our budget because that was an unanticipated expense. We have essentially spent through all of our and have accommodated for all of our apparatus repair budget for the year. So we are starting to prioritize repairs and bump what we can into 2025. Finally, the last thing I want to discuss is the countywide burn ban. So the commissioners passed a resolution in October based upon current weather and a recommendation from fire chiefs in the county and the state forester to ban all open burning in the county for 30 days. That burn ban, regardless of the rain that came on Sunday, remains in effect. Brush fires are significantly up in the county. We normally have 2 or 3 countywide per week. I want to say last week we were in the 50s for count of brush fires in the county. The Westchester Fire Department's no exception. The ban and making people put them out across all 6 municipalities. The borough ahead of us and we were able to jump in line. That generally does not happen.
And just to confirm, we're putting these assets in a high yielding savings account, Mr. Metric, and until that time when we finally sign the contract. So any will earn anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 per year in interest. Correct? Perfect. That's it.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next one on the list, the police department.
Hello, Josh Lee, Police Chief. How's everybody? I'm going to burn through this pretty quick, and then I have a couple slides I want to show you on special operation that we ran last week, last week. So the numbers for October, notably a little bit up where we would expect them to be in our alcohol and our all other areas. We did have homecoming this last month in October. Our burglaries were down, our motor vehicle thefts were down. That stuff is good. Everything else is pretty much in line with where we'd expect. If we go to the next 2 slides that are homecoming numbers, and I just put the crimes up there that we're used to dealing with when we have these types of issues. We can see they're pretty flat from last year, 2023 being on the left and the darker blue on the right, 2024. So a similar homecoming experience for us law enforcement wise from 2023 to 2024. If we get into the noise complaints, tracking very similarly to the way we have the last several months, the last few months. If we look at that black portion is the southeast quadrant of the borough, and that's responsible for about half of our noise complaints in October. And the next slide shows us within that southeast quadrant where most of the complaints came from, and we can see almost 3/4 or 75% came from the Walnut Street and Matlack Street corridor. And if we go and see how the noise complaints have been resolved, excuse me, that black area again is going to show us noise complaints that are unfounded. In other words, there was a complaint of noise, the police went out and there was not probable cause to move forward with anything. That green area, which is almost exactly 1/4 of the pie, is the complaints that were the complaints that were called in by a complainant and were founded by police. And if we move to the next slide, of those founded complaints, we issued 3 citations, 6 warnings for a loud party. 6 warnings for noise that was not the typical loud party noise, 4 warnings for loud parties, and the smaller pieces of the pie there represent a warning for construction on Sunday, a warning for a loud dog, a warning for children playing. We've seen similar stuff in previous months. And as far as the 3 citations that we issued, they were all related to a premise. We filled out the disorderly premise forms. They were all forwarded up to the Codes Enforcement Department. And that's pretty much it for our regular report. Any questions there on that?
The only thing I noticed was, yes, incidents were down during homecoming, but the ones that were up were like violent, like fighting and assault. I thought that was kind of interesting.
I'll go back to my notes and touch on that a little bit for you. So our fight calls went from 5 to 10. They doubled. Those were fights that were reported as a fight when we got there. There was no actual crime that was committed, or at least nobody arrested for a crime that's committed. Our assaults doubled also. So we had 2 last year and 4 this year. So a doubling, but not necessarily a significant number of offenses. Does that make a little sense?
Yeah. It's just, it's interesting, you know. I'll be curious, I guess, when we look at these numbers next year and see if people are fighting more. Been a very, you see around there's a lot of, our country in general has been a little bit angrier at each other for the past year. So it's interesting that we see more fights during homecoming weekend. That's all.
Okay. If we move to the next, Jeff can load up the presentation. I'll move through this. We're moving at a good pace. I don't want to slow us down, but I wanted to show you the steps that we took with the election and the preventive measures that we took for the election, which we all know happened last week. So early this year, the department recognized, hey, in November comes this election, obviously contentious, the perceived issues around the election and possible civil unrest or violence surrounding the election. So we took steps, and we have every officer in the Westchester Police Department has been trained through a partnership. Must be doing it wrong. Through a partnership with our neighbors in West Goshen, the Tredyffrin Township Police and the Borough Downingtown Police, we have every one of our 42 officers trained in handling civil unrest with a field force unit. We're the only department in the county that can say that. As far as I know, we're the only department in the Tri-County area that can say that. It says nearly every officer. It is every officer. We have the largest contingent of officers trained like this in the county. In fact, the county has made attempts to have a county team put together with this type of training. Very, very good steps they've taken, but we got out in front of it and said that the Westchester Police needs to be trained at this level for its citizens, and we did that on our own. Sorry, I lost myself. So with that, we also needed equipment. we recommissioned a piece of equipment we have that used to be used for the regional tactical team. The tactical team no longer uses. It's a trailer. It is out back of this 401 East Gay. And in that, we have equipment that we can mobilize for an incident should we need it. Protective equipment for the officers as well as some equipment for handling unrest. So as election day we grew closer, we put a plan together to increase staffing, both sworn law enforcement and our dispatch center. And that you can see is our emergency operations center in service downstairs. That staffing included what we see here. So every one of the administrators worked essentially a 12-hour shift that day. In addition to the regular 5 officers that we had on patrol in the daytime, the numbers you see there are the upstaffed amount of officers we had here in Westchester. So an additional almost 23 or 24 officers were working throughout the day. And we had that field force team that was on duty until midnight. Fortunately, well, I'm ahead of myself real quick. We had a briefing at 6 a.m. this morning, not this morning, at 6 a.m. the morning of election day, where every supervisor that was involved in that event, and there were 7 or 8, we got on the same page. We kept our fingers crossed for a smooth, peaceful day, and we got ready to go. Obviously, you see our main concerns. I hit on them already. We're fortunate to report that we had no violence. We had no major issues. The county did receive a bomb threat at the Government Services Center on Westtown Road. We provided support to their mission there with a few officers from patrol, but we're happy to report, despite all of the, maybe even because of the effort that we put in, it was a 100% success, but without violence of any type. The reason I mention this, not because, not for any reason other than to let you know, we obviously, as the police department, take the borough's safety seriously. This is an example of something. It's a one-off. We won't have an election like this, hopefully, ever again, but at least for 4 years. But these are the type of steps that we take, not only for things like homecoming and the election, but we spoke last month about if the Phillies were to have won the World Series, which unfortunately they didn't get there, other things that bring a large number of people to town or possible unrest to town. And it also comes all at a cost. We will pay the bills for all of this. You can see that high number of upstaffing with police. We were as lean as we could be, but we did it as safely as we could also. And, I hope that the council recognizes that, and I hope that the citizens recognize that too. So that's why I wanted to let everybody know. Other than that, I have nothing.
No, unless there's any public comment, questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, good fellowship.
Good evening, Justin Robbins, Interim Director of Operations, Good Fellowship Ambulance. For the month of October, Good Fellowship responded to 704 calls, 203 of them were here in the borough. Nothing really out of the ordinary here on our report. Unlike our friends over at the police department, we actually saw no noticeable uptick during homecoming. We did upstaff like normal, bring in some additional crews, and as well as our crews down at the university comprised of students, but we didn't see any increase in calls. We actually had a decrease in October from September in university calls, as well as our drug and alcohol calls. So hopefully that's a trend that we'll continue to see. As I stated, nothing of note to report on our data for the month. The one thing I did just want to mention while I was up here is that our annual subscription mailer has gone out. It should be in all your mailboxes by now. This is important. It's our largest fundraiser of the year. And what that does for the residents is it eliminates any out-of-cost expenses if you do need to take an ambulance. So you'll see it in your mailboxes. You'll see the streets, the yard signs that we've placed out throughout the local. So if anybody has any questions. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to old business. Approve October 2024 meeting minutes.
Approved.
I'm good too. Any questions? Nope. All right. Motion to approve amended rules and regulations of the Civil Service Commission.
Hi, my name is David McMain, and I, along with my partner, Lori Fiore, are the solicitors for the Civil Service Commission. I think last time there was a question, I believe, by Councilperson Dorsey. We figured out what the problem was. There was a definition called appointing authority that was changed. And where the confusion comes in is under the civil service rules, both as they exist now and as they exist statewide, is the mayor appoints certain things like police officers subject to approval by council, appoints administrative positions subject to council approval, and appoints the police chief subject to council approval. And the definition, mindful of that, it got changed inaccurately. So we corrected the definition. In fact, I think we eliminated the term altogether and just were very specific at each of the specified places in the rules who's responsible, who has the authority for that. So I think with that, the concern that was raised at the last meeting's been amended. The commission recommended it unanimously, and so it's now, I guess, in the hands of council to approve.
Yeah, and my position here tonight is because it was Lisa that asked the
Right.
question. You know, we can discuss it next week at our work session and everything. I don't know if we should recommend anything right now until she has an opportunity to hear your explanation and look at it. She's on vacation right now, so I pinged her today thinking maybe
Okay.
she'd seen the email, but just want to make sure she has a chance to take a look.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions from anyone else? All right, next item on the agenda, motion to approve special events permit, Stanley Stream.
I'll help Keith out there. Full recommendation there for approval, no issues with that. With the point of note that that's a special event occurs on a holiday where police officers will be entitled to additional pay because it's holiday. And I don't think that should hold this back any. For next year, I think council should consider when they look at the fees that are associated with special events that they take into consideration that holiday pay. But a full thumbs up for the Stanley Stream,
What date is it on again?
January 1.
It says 1/1/24. That's why I got confused instead of 1/1/25. But yeah, okay.
Probably a typo.
We all forget for at least a month what year we're in January. So, okay. Any questions for you, Brian?
I do not, no.
Me neither. All right. We can put that on for recommendation to approve, right? All right. New business. Discuss review processes to guide resident compliance and improvement of enforcement of violations of trash ordinance. Okay. Discuss process of compliance and violations. Now, was that the one that we moved forward? There was a trash ordinance conversation last night at the, and is this is about the working through if they're not compliant with the ordinance and the trash at this point in time.
Yeah, the Public Works Committee is working through suggested revisions to Chapter 62 that address the rules around private trash hauling. And private trash hauling is when someone who's getting public trash hauling is exceeding our volume limits. So it'll be things like a 4-unit building or a commercial property, all qualify as private, would default to private trash hauling, meaning the borough won't pick it up. And there are regulations in the code that the Public Works Committee is working on to address some issues that have come up, which are in order for a large property to dispose of 2 cubic yards of trash, they are going out and buying 12 35-gallon containers. And we want to create a minimum threshold of containers that you can have before you have to get a dumpster. That was one issue. The second issue was the location of those containers when they're not deployed to be picked up, whether there's a offset from the alleyway that we should talk about and close a loophole in the ordinance that says basically they're not supposed to be visible from the front of the property. We also care a little bit about the back of the property. And pardon me, the third issue is we talked about last night, is slipping my mind. But the committee had 2 out of 3 recommendations. You were there last night, right?
I was listening in as well on Facebook, so I heard the conversation.
For the Act Committee or Public Works?
Public Works.
Public
my,
Works.
No,
my apologies.
I'm not on the
Sorry.
Public Works.
Okay. But yeah, so I heard the talk, and I'd been in the conversations with Kristen and Brian and Bernie about those changes. So at this point in time, I think there were a couple of things that they were going to work out still in that ordinance. And then I guess the question here is, once that gets updated, or even before that gets updated, is there anything that we want to do to change our how we enforce the ordinance? I think that might have been where the conversation here started.
The staff doesn't have a recommendation yet, because what we've done is we've transferred some of this reporting and remediation to the Public Works team, who is doing the collection. Now that team of people has eyes on the condition of trash in only one quadrant, 1 day a week when it's ripe for pickup. So they're catching people who are putting trash out for collection in an inappropriate manner. Whereas we still have an issue in the other 3 quadrants if you have a poorly kept property. So that has to be proactively enforced. And also we have to be responsive to requests when they come into our request portal that's online. Citizens can say, hey, there's a problem over here. You haven't caught it yet. Can you come out and take a look? And we'll do that through Building and Housing. I'm not seeing yet any recommendation from Public Works or Building and Housing for ordinance changes. It's really reallocating resources, meaning staff, and assigning new responsibilities to staff, and figuring out who's going to, when we have to cite somebody, who's going to issue the citation. Because a citation is not just simply a ticket. You might think when a parking officer writes a parking ticket, it's over with. It's not. And the same is true when we write tickets for trash. We have to follow up a day later to see that it's been remedied. We have to follow up in 7 days to see that the fine's been paid. If either of those things are not satisfied, then we have to write a citation. Then we get a court date if the person wants the hearing, and the person who wrote the violation has to go to court. So there's some follow-up that has to happen. And I want that follow-up to be done by trained individuals. And right now, the trained people to do that are in Building and Housing. The trained person to do that is in Building and Housing right now. We're hiring a second. So we're working on that cross-departmental coordination. And we also talked about in the ACT committee, we're talking about the same issue in 3 committees. And we talked about in the ACT committee about deploying extra resources during certain special events. And we're going to create a list of those where we would want to have overtime offered to Public Works staff to be able to do some of this enforcement. So I think maybe what would be helpful would be to put this all together in one thing, since we're talking about it in 3 spots.
Agreed. Yeah. All right. So
Why don't we work on that for December, and that way we all know what the left and right and middle hands are doing.
yeah, it's silly for us to talk in 3 different committees about 3 pieces of the triangle, if you will. Okay. Cool.
I'm in agreement.
Does anyone have any comment from? No? Okay, those in attendance. All right, moving on. Approve special events permit. B, are there other special events permits? Nope. Okay. All right, discuss agenda of issues between Westchester Borough and Westchester University.
I sent around an email to council Friday, November 1, and it came out of a discussion and a effort to have routine communication with representatives of the university of what issues we might have in common, we might be in conflict are, and I sent around a bullet point list of what those are. What I would like to do, I would like this item to kind of live in this committee in case you want to change or ask questions about any of these issues, bring new things to my attention that might not be on there. And then as part of my monthly reporting to council, we'll make this just a recurring item where we will have updates on progress and so forth. So I thought tonight would be the first time. I did send that around. There's nothing we don't know about on this list. I could say them out loud if you want to, and then we could talk about them, or we could, if you have suggestions for things to add, we could do that right now as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at the list and I gave you a little bit of feedback already, but Brian, do you want to take a look while we're here and provide some feedback? And maybe even there might be some feedback from our residents that they want us to think about highlighting.
I mean, are we allowed to make that email public? That's the other thing, to put that bullet point list, I think, that you put.
Yeah, there's nothing legal in
Right.
in this email. It's just a bunch of ideas that I think it was off the top of my head.
Well, I'm glad to see there was coordination with the university regarding homecoming. I think that was a good thing, in which case we received a reimbursement amount, I think, or maybe we will be potentially. And let's hope that is the case. And then, my other concern, and I expressed this in other committees, is regarding the High Street project, right? Like, what is the university going to be doing? Are they going to be contributing to that project? Since the majority of people are walking up and down High Street are university students. So I'd like to see some more collaboration with that as well.
All right, Daryl, do you have anything? Are you sure? Anyone else have any thoughts or things that you would hope that we could highlight with our communication between the borough and the university?
I know I might have left something off there from GFAC.
Okay, all right, well then we'll keep, then other business. Seeing none, then we are adjourned at 5:57.